'cause he gets up in the morning, then he goes to work at 9, and he comes back home at 5:30, gets the same train every time, 'cause his world is built on...
Hi there, this is Realize Magazine from London, and I'm sitting here with a noted biographer. This is Barry Miles, otherwise known as Miles by his friend, and I'm sitting in London. Did I already say that? Whatever. It's an exciting place to be, and I've run into more intellectual conversations in the past 4 days than I've had in LA in probably a year. So here we are.
We're known for it.
Yes, yes, they have a lot to say. So, Mr. Miles here has recently brought out a new biography on William Burroughs, and what distinguishes Barry Miles as a biographer is that he knows the people who he's writing about. So, you were actually a good friend of William Burroughs.
Yes, I met him in '65, I guess, originally, and but I'd always liked his work enormously. Many years ago, in the very early '60s, I used to live in a communal apartment in London, and there was one of the guys who was sharing the place was a guy called Peter Wallen, who later on ran was the head of the UCLA film school.
Mm-hmm.
And Peter, though, I remember one day him sitting down in the living room and saying, "This is such a cool pad, man. There's always a fresh copy of Naked Lunch on the table." And in the coffee table, they had two things. They had a copy of Naked Lunch, obviously, and a big bowl of pop, because one of the guys in the place was a dope dealer. So for the early '60s, that was pretty cool.
Right.
And in those days, of course, you couldn't get Naked Lunch because it was banned from both Britain and the United States, as a matter of fact. It didn't get published here until about '64, and in the States until '62. But it was first published in Paris by the Olympia Press, and pretty much all the Olympia Press books were banned just because so many of the other titles were pornographic. And so it was really cool to have a copy of Naked Lunch. So there was always this sort of cachet about Burroughs, and I happened to love that book. And oddly enough, I later on was the co-editor of the revised text edition of it. So I finally put my own imprimatur on the thing and re-edited it.
That's exciting. I didn't know that.
I did the same with Ginsberg's Howl, as a matter of fact. So two of the three key beat generation texts I managed to
No, you're very pivotal.
to get my mitts on in some form or another.
No, but I mean, what's wonderful is it also knowing Allen Ginsberg, but you bring to these stories, a personal sense that your average biographer would not have. So you understand actually the soul and the spirit of these people, and you actually held William Burroughs in very high regard. Obviously, you wouldn't have done the biography otherwise, but I can't wait to read it. I'm sorry, I just learned about it. But let's talk about Burroughs as a rebel, which he's kind of known as. But let's talk about his early upbringing and what he was born in St. Louis in a wealthy family.
St. Louis, 1914. His grandfather invented the adding machine. Although because of the Depression, they managed to sell their shares actually just at the right time, and they didn't really suffer. But his money didn't come from the adding machine company because they'd already gotten rid of all of that paperwork. And when Bill was growing up, his father owned a paint factory and in Detroit actually, and was employing I think 200 people. I mean, there's a serious concern, and there was a good income stream. So he lived the life of a typical sort of 20s, man about town. He drove around in a sports car and rode over people's lawns. Generally, threw expensive food around in restaurants. And, wore one of those huge coats. I forget what they call it. Those funny cartoons you see in the New Yorker in the 20s. That was how Bill was. But there was another side to him. He went to Harvard, stayed in the most expensive of the student residences. But he knew all along that he was gay, and consequently there was that side. He moved in the Harvard gay set and drove down to Harlem to nightclubs and things like that. This is in the late 20s, early 30s. And then eventually decided to study medicine in Vienna, so he spent time there in 1937-38. before basically the Nazis became, it was quite obvious that what was going to happen in Austria, so he came back and cut off his studies. But he grew up surrounded by servants. There were 5 servants in the house, and a yard man and a nanny.
Was there also some sort of financial source on his mother's side? Landowners, slave owners in the South.
His grandmother came from a slave owning family, yes, and she cared passionately about the souls of all her slaves. Apparently, they found one of her diaries after she died, in which she was constantly writing about the souls of her slaves. And then, yes, on his mother's side, they were mostly preachers, and they started a number of churches. 3 of those churches that are still standing in St. Louis were built by the Burroughs family.
So very religious side.
Well, on that side, yeah, the grandmother was religious. Bill's mother wasn't, and nor was his father, so he wasn't. As long as their grandfather was still alive, he was a preacher. They had to go to church, obviously, to see him preach. But as soon as he died, they were no longer required to go to Sunday school or anything.
So, and who was this Lee, member of the family that had become the big PR agent for all kinds of scurrilous corporations?
Well, one of the worst, as it were, the worst members of the Burroughs family was a guy called Ivy Lee, who was apparently the world's first PR agent, and he's also got the reputation of sending out the world's first press release. But he specialised in people like the Rockefeller family and sending out false information about strike breakers, and there was one particularly unpleasant incident where there was a lot of people died in a fire that was actually caused by people strike breaking, and he claimed it was something else. I mean, it was a typical piece of sort of big robber baron style operation there, because he was working for the Farben company that was making the poison gas in Germany, and also for the German Nazi Party, who at that time America hadn't joined the war. He said that he told Burroughs apparently that said, I've spoken to Hitler and he assures me that he has nothing at all against the Jews. So
straight from the horse's mouth.
Straight from the horse's mouth.
Well, so
but Burroughs, as you can imagine, did not get on at all well with him.
Right.
I mean, Ivy took one look at Burroughs and he knew that it was.
There's the whole William Tell moment where in which you can describe the disastrous party that led to the death of his wife, but in the process of exhuming or exorcising that spirit, he talks about the ugly spirit, the dark side, and also about how the huge American corporations are part of the ugly spirit. Can you put that into context, the whole William Tell thing in that?
Well, yes. I mean, he was gay, but he did have a very close relationship with this woman called Joan Vollmer, or Joan Adams, and they lived together. They had a child together, in fact. But she always accepted the fact that he preferred boys, and they lived together for many years, in fact, and finished up living in Mexico City in the late 40s, early 50s. And Burroughs had gone down to South America with a boyfriend, and it hadn't worked out. It was doomed from the start, apparently, and largely because the boy wasn't gay. And Bill was very depressed by this, came back, undoubtedly had some arguments with Joan, obviously, because he'd been away for about 6 or 7 weeks, and leaving her with the child, to look after, and another girl that she had from a previous marriage. And one day, about 2 or 3 days after he got back, Burroughs was walking down the street and he just felt that his face was completely wet, and we realised that the tears were just streaming down his face, and he knew something was really wrong. And so he did what Bill always did when something was really wrong. He went back and started to throw back as many drinks as he could get into himself. And by that time, Joan was also feeling the strain of this obviously problematic relationship, and she had become an alcoholic. In the States, she had been really strung out on Penn Street, but when she moved to Mexico, she became an alcoholic instead. And she used to begin drinking at 8 in the morning, just sipping tequila. But by this time, on this particular day, we're now talking 6 or 7 in the evening, she was obviously pretty well away. And she used to drink a bottle at least a day, maybe more. And Bill, of course, was drunk, and they met up, not at home, but at a drinks party above a bar, run by some expatriate Americans. and they were all, it was a crowded room, they were drinking, and at one point Burroughs said, let's do our William Tell act. And Joan very foolishly put a whiskey shot glass on her head.
Because that's what William Tell did, right?
This is what William Tell put an apple on his head, but or rather on his son's head, and also it might have been better if Bill was using a bow and arrow, but he wasn't. He had a .38 in his pocket, and he fired at the glass. He knew the gun shot low, as a matter of fact, but it shot much lower than he was expecting. It hit her right in the forehead, just there, and she died about an hour later. And Bill was distraught. I mean, apparently, according to witnesses, no one had ever seen anyone literally tearing their hair out. And as he told me, because we often talked about this, it was madness. Even if he'd hit the glass, there would have been shards of glass flying around a crowded room. It could have caused untold damage. It was just total insanity. And he tried to atone for this. He had by going off into the jungle. He did spend a couple of weeks in jail before his lawyers got him out, and he went to the South American jungle to try and find the most powerful hallucinogens he could find to somehow shock himself out of whatever that mindset was, whatever side of him that caused him to do something so idiotic.
Was that ayahuasca?
This was ayahuasca, which the local Indians called it Yahé. There's one of his books is called the Yahé Letters. His correspondence with Allen Ginsberg from the jungle, which is hilarious actually. It's very, very funny.
That can lead you into an even darker,
Well, I think it took him to some pretty dark places, and some of his descriptions are astonishing. I mean, he'll be lying in the mud outside a witch doctor's sort of hut, throwing up and seeing flashes of blue light and images of cities that later on he identified as Lima, but he hadn't even been to yet, sort of thing. I mean, just astonishing things. And whether this did change him, I'm not in a position to know, because this was a good long time ago, and he may well have become a different person, but there was still a very dark side to him, and he was still controlled by demons. I mean, as far as he was concerned, there were elements in himself that were controlling him, and whether these came from his upbringing and the received information from that society, the robber baron sort of society of St. Louis, because his parents knew nothing but bankers and lawyers and corporate people. That those were the sort of circles they moved in. With all their conversation was just about how terrible their servants were and stuff.
So, but the death of his wife is what triggered his writing career, in effect. Right?
Yes, he had in fact written a couple of books already. He'd written Junkie, which was about his experiences in New York as a junkie, and a book called Queer, which was written in the very early 50s, which was pretty outrageous for the time. And naturally, he didn't even attempt to get it published, but he wrote it under that title about being gay, living in Mexico, and but it was this incident which made him into a writer, and he really spent the rest of his life trying to battle against control systems in general, and turning that battle into a literary quest, really. So he took it into the Nova mob trying to destroy civilization, so that it became, in books like Nova Express, he uses it as a metaphor for the big corporations destroying the ecology of the planet and stuff. Very prescient stuff. I mean, decades ahead of his time. I mean, absolutely amazing. And police state mentality, and generally anything that controls you. He wasn't trying to get rid of the control, but he wanted to expose it so that you knew what was controlling you. Whether it was advertising, big business, big corporations, religion, your government, your religion, your patriotism, anything, everything. He wanted to be just question everything, question, and if you agreed with it, fine. And now it's your idea. But before it was somebody else's.
You have to own it.
Yeah.
So, but all of this kind of chaotic interior life actually informed a whole new writing style as well. And then he also worked. Sometimes people would come in and help edit and finalize a manuscript that he walked away from, you said?
Well, he particularly after he got involved with the cut-up technique, which he thought that words themselves were a virus and contained a tremendous amount of received information, that each language has got a different set of values that are embodied in it,
It's quite true,
or embedded
really.
in it,
Right.
embedded and embodied.
Yeah,
Particularly, to do with gender and all the rest of it, which has been explored, of course, since then. By using the cut-up technique, he thought you could actually read between the lines, and so he started to explore a number of areas of breaking through normal modes of the normal genre, should we say, particularly by going against the notion of the bourgeois novel with a beginning and a middle and an end, and character development and stuff like that. There's none of that in Burroughs ever. No character development at all. His style is
fill in the blank.
If it's anything, it's picaresque.
Oh, yeah.
His best model, I suppose, would have been Rabelais. He
Rabelais,
particularly liked Rabelais, and that notion that you can just drop in and out of a book, just a set of stories, you can read them in any order, and you can read Burroughs in any order.
Yeah.
And in fact, Naked Lunch itself
It's
was
perfect for this generation, right?
perfect.
Pick up your iPhone and read 5 minutes of Burroughs.
Yeah. Well, Naked Lunch was written in a random order, or published in a random order, because all the separate sections were typed up by a team of friends. Burroughs' own typing was terrible, so he didn't do it. And it was all sent off to the typesetter as each section was finished. And when the proofs came back, they were in completely random order, just according to how which pieces had been typed up. And Bill had a look at it and said, "This is fine, just as it is." So the American edition is actually an earlier version of the
So you
real
read the
first.
British version or the which?
Well, you read the American edition.
Okay.
What you would read now is the one that I edited with James Grantmoss.
There you go.
We basically
Check it
put
out.
everything together. And got rid of
Well,
some-
so the reason I'm very excited actually to have met you and looking forward to reading this new biography is because you actually lived through this amazing period and knew so many of the principal people. So whether it was Ginsberg or, I mean, you were just part of this whole melee and have a unique point of view and a very very ripe and full point of view on this. So I really look forward to reading it. Now, one of the questions that I've been wondering about is as you look at this period and see it as this kind of fomenting of energy, whether you look at the 60s or the political upheavals, etc. And I'm curious how you feel about our current generation, the young people in this current generation, and where they can go. Can they ever reprise these moments? What you've lived through all this so in such a deep way. So what do you see moving forward? Do you see more possibility?
Well, yes, of course. I mean, I think there's more and more democracy in terms of spreading ideas.
So there's an underground scene still.
Well, I think there's always some form of bohemia. There has for the last couple of hundred years almost, and in many ways the sort of youth culture of the 60s was that, just as the Paris in the 20s was very much outside an ordinary bourgeois society.
So where do you see it now?
Yes,
There's a lot going on. Youth revolts in Hong Kong.
Youth revolts in Hong Kong. I mean, Snowden, Julian Assange, all of these things, WikiLeaks, all of that stuff is the equivalent of what the underground press in the 60s, basically, and the sort of radical little magazines of the 20s. I mean, each era has got its own alternative form of communication, and now it's much more democratic. The biggest problem now is sorting out the information, not getting it.
Yeah, it's
the idea
diluted because
the idea of an avant-garde is almost inconceivable now because you can't be avant anymore. You do something and people are watching it in real time in Sydney or something. It's
right.
Whereas it used to take 3 years before that information finally reached people. And in some sort of obscure magazine or other.
Everything's happening at once.
It's set in letterpress and then finally mailed off to people. Yeah, so it's all instant now.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean to say there's not a tremendously strong counterculture of one sort or another, whether it's political or in terms of art even. I mean, the more art becomes commodified, then obviously the more there will be an underground rebellion against that. You know? And
Although
not just the Stuckists or whatever they're called. You know, it'll be you know, there's bound to be a reaction against Gagosian and very similar people.
Well, you know, the funny thing is, though, that even if it's like supposedly decommodified or if it's just ephemeral, people want to sell it, and people are there to buy it. You know,
Good art, it's art. You know, art's just a word. It's not the thing itself.
Exactly. Well, I'm sure we could go talk another hour or so on all the other books you've written and experiences you've had. But the one thing I wanted to bring up was your experience as a publisher of an underground press.
Yes.
And whether this, you know, this was a kind of hectic, wild era where you guys were dangerous, right?
Well, we went into it with complete naivety, I think, and didn't expect such an extreme reaction from the establishment. But the International Times, which was launched in October '66, and by the 5th issue, the police raided, and with an obscene publications warrant, and on the grounds that we had published an interview with Dick Gregory, in which he used the word motherfucker, and we, like idiots, printed it, not realising that in England at the time, you know, you couldn't say that.
We've come a long way, right?
We've come a long way. So they came and they seized everything in the office. I mean, literally everything, including the phone books. So they took people's personal address books, they took all the back issues. I mean, the room was just empty. Our office was completely stripped. No
Were you there when they came?
Oh, sure. Oh. Yeah. You know, they were looking in the ashtrays. They obviously were hoping to find drugs as well.
Yeah, right.
But there weren't any. And in my bookshop, which was on the ground floor of the same building, they searched that at the same time as well. Took away, as usual, copies of Naked Lunch and all the usual suspects. And eventually returned them all kind of grubby, you know. I mean, so hopefully some policemen enjoyed it, you know. You could just see some, well, this was pretty good stuff.
You created some radicals, even in that very raid.
Anyway, yeah, so they kept it all for 3 months, and then they decided not to bring any charges. And
well, that's amazing.
a big 3-ton truck came up and threw the whole lot down into the basement. And that's English democracy for you. Yes.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah. Exciting times. Exciting times.
Well, we were worried. I mean, you know, we thought we were all going to go to jail or something. We didn't know what was going on.
Yeah, sure.
But it just shows you only have to scratch the surface a little bit, and they come down on you like a ton of bricks. And it's been the same in their total overreaction to, well, the London riots recently. You know, well, not recently, a few years ago now, where there were kids who stole like a bottle of water or something. There was one kid who literally did. That was all he stole. He got 3 months. You know, whereas. Like, you know, I remember not too long ago, Lady Porter rigged an election from Westminster Council. Right. She didn't go to jail because she was a friend of Margaret Thatcher. You know, I mean, so yeah, there's still tremendous inequality here, and as long as there's inequality, not just financial but political inequality, you're going to have people rebelling against it. You know, and the stronger the division becomes, then the stronger the rebellion probably. Just like it's happening, you know, like in St. Louis right now as we speak, you know, you know, a virtually all-white government of an all-black, you know, section of the town.
Well, I hope that art always remains integrated with revolution on some level or other.
Oh, it will.
You know,
yes.
It's really the most powerful tool in many ways, aside from bodies, you know, on the street. But check out.
Vive la Revolution.
I was going to say that. Vive la Revolution. I really was. And check out all of Barry's books, including Frank Zappa biography, and on and on.
Yes, Miles. What is it called? BarryMiles.co.uk.
There you go.
Yes, not .com. .co.uk.
.co.uk.
Yes.
Fascinating man. Check him out. Now we're going to go off to a pub and have some fun.
That's right.
And
really talk.
And he comes back home at 5:30, gets the same train every time. 'Cause his world is built on punctuality, it never fails. And he's all so good, and he's all so fine, and he's all so healthy in his body and his mind. He's a well-respected man about town, doing the best things so conservative.